So we got some exciting and tough forming algebraic equations and algebraic fractions in question 7, but it starts off with a fairly straightforward conversion graph. So there's 200 dirhams, and every 3.67 of them gives us $1. So it's as simple as dividing 200 by 3.67 to get us $54.50. There shouldn't be that extra dot in there. I'll just get rid of that. That's better. And it's just worth pointing out that it says specifically here it should be 2 decimal places. Don't go any further than that. So, onto some algebra. We've got to add these two fractions together. It's actually completely discrete from the previous question at this point. Nothing to do with the dinars and the dollars. They will come back in later, though. So to add or subtract fractions, the key is to make sure they have the same denominator. They do not currently have the same denominator. To do that here, we're going to multiply the one on the left by x plus 1. Although it's not actually multiply it by x plus 1, because we're going to multiply the numerator by x plus 1 and the denominator by x plus 1. If you multiply the numerator by the same amount on the... if you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same amount, it doesn't change the size of the fraction. It's like a half, the same as 2 over 4. So then if I multiply the fraction on the right by x, and again we're not actually multiplying by that, I'm just changing it to an equivalent fraction, which has now got the same denominator. Once we've got that, just like when dealing with regular fractions, we don't mess about with the denominators here. They stay the same. It's still x plus 1 on the denominator. Our numerator is going to be 1000 x plus 1 minus 1000x. Now this does look particularly messy with this stylus. I hope you'll forgive how poor this is looking at the moment. Right, moving on then. It then says I've got to give it in its simplest form. I have written those in single fraction now, but it's got to be in its simplest form. In order to do that, I'm going to start by expanding out those brackets, and I'm just going to see if there's some way I can factorise that numerator. Some people might be tempted here to divide by x plus 1. We cannot do that. It is not a factor of all 3 terms. It's not a factor of this term. It needs to be in everything. So at some point I'm going to have to factorise this numerator, but first let's just simplify it out and see what happens. Maybe it'll get nice and easy. So on the numerator I get 1000 times x, and then 1000 times 1, which is just 1000. And then my negative 1000x stays there, which is excellent. If I look at that numerator now, you can see that there's a positive 1000x and there's a negative 1000x, so they are just going to cancel each other out, leaving me with an answer now where the numerator is 1000 and the denominator is x multiplied by x plus 1. Lots of students ask me whether that's the simplest form or whether they should multiply it out. It doesn't matter. You're going to get the marks either way in this instance. Can't really say one's simpler than the other one. It's still the same amount of terms. So now the second one is a bit more complicated, but it is really important to, once we've got our questions together, once we start forming some equations, to remember that these two are very well linked. It's question B part I and question B part II, part 1 and part 2. So they are likely going to be linked. It does seem strange to suddenly go off and do some algebraic fractions when you've been doing conversions. So bear that in mind for a minute. First thing we're going to do is try and put together some sort of starting equation to do with this information here. If you haven't got time, pause it to have a read. I'm going to get going straight away. So looking at this, it gives us a couple of bits of information. The exchange rate changes, and then Winston changes two things in different years, and we get a different amount. Obviously, he gets more euros with the better exchange rate in 2015 than he did in 2014. And then what seems completely unrelated to anything is this. All of a sudden we're told, well, make a quadratic. Well, let's have a look at it step by step and see what we can do. I think actually here I'm going to draw a couple of equations, not there. From here I'm going to draw a couple of, not equations, but expressions. He's changed 1,000 rand into euro in both years. So in 2014, the amount he'd get is similar to part A earlier. He'd get 1,000 divided by how much it costs for each euro, which is going to be X. I'm going to keep changing colours now so it starts getting more obvious what's going on. So in 2014 he'd have got 1,000 over X as his the amount of money he gets. Then in 2015 he's going to get, he's actually going to get fewer rand, fewer rand. He's going to get 1,000. It's going to be divided by a bigger number. He's going to get divided by x plus 1, because for every x plus 1, he gets 1 euro. So that's how much he got in 2014, that's how much he got in 2015. So we know the difference between them, the amount more he got, is 4.5. So I'm going to turn that into an equation. I'm going to say the amount he got in 2014, subtract the amount he got in 2015, has to be 4.5. So let's put that in. So 2014 amount is 1,000 over x. 2015 amount I need to take away is 1,000 over x plus 1, and that equals 4.5. I hate having decimals and fractions at the same time, so I'm just going to change that to 9 over 2. I'm certain that will help me later on, even though I haven't actually done this question. Looking back up, do you remember what I said about part 1 and part 2? This was in part 1. This was in part 2. We've already done all the legwork. I know I can change that left-hand side for that simple amount there. So let's just change that. Everything on the left there for 1,000 over x plus 1. That's going to be equal to 9 over 2 still. Now, what can I do with that? I've got to try and arrange it so it looks something like this. So essentially I don't want any denominators, so I'm going to sort of cross multiply up. I'm going to put them up to there and that up to there, so I know that 2,000 is going to be 9 lots of x plus 1. This is looking good. It's starting to look a lot like what I've got there. If I expand that bracket out on the right hand side, I get 9x squared and 9x. On the left, my 2,000. Still, it's not quite exactly the same. I'm going to take that 2,000 away from the other side, so I get 0 is equal to 9x squared plus 9x minus 2,000, and I have shown it. And finally, we are asked to solve this. Use a quadratic formula to solve that equation. Now, if you got that first part, great, but if you didn't, you can still have a go at this. The quadratic formula, I'm just going to write out now. There we go. There's a fantastic song to do with this. To help you remember it, you do need to remember it for your IGCSE exam. Minus b plus minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So substituting the values I've got, the 3 I've got, this is my a, the coefficient of x squared. that is my b, the coefficient of x, and negative 2000 is my c, the coefficient, well, just the constant, I mean. So I'm just going to write that down to make sure I get all the marks. I'm going to sub them in for a, b, and c. Now, as this is worth 4 marks, I really need to make sure I've copied everything in exactly. I need to have made sure my b's are in there, my negatives are all correct, and I think I've got that right. So off the back of that, I get 2 answers. I can either have a positive one, 14.42, or I can get negative 15.42. It then asks us to think about this, the number of euros Winston received in 2014. Well, let's think back to what we were talking about. What was X to begin with? X is how much a euro was worth in 2014. So, if we know a euro in 2014 was worth 14.42, I'm pretty sure a euro wasn't worth negative 15 rand. That would lead to some very strange economics. And Winston changed 1,000 of them. Then he is going to get 1,000 divided by 14.42. That's how many rands he gets for each euro. And that is 69.35 euros. Oops, I'm trying to do my answers in blue. 69.35 euros. Right, that was a heck of a long video. I hope some of it is useful to you.